Childhood and dreams.
Have you ever wondered how a poor boy, the son of Jewish immigrants, managed to create one of the greatest superhero universes in history? How could someone who grew up during the Great Depression in the United States imagine such grand worlds? I am Stan Lee, and this is my story. I was born on December 28, 1922, in New York City, the son of Celia and Jack Lieber. My family was humble, and life was not easy at all. The economic crisis devastated the United States, and my father, who was a tailor, could barely find work. Many times I dreamed of living in a different world, full of adventures, where heroes could overcome the greatest difficulties. Maybe that is what made me love reading so much. Since childhood, I devoured books and magazines. I loved adventure stories, mysteries, and heroes who always faced great challenges. I also enjoyed movies and was inspired by actors who seemed larger than life. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be remembered. At school, I wrote short texts and dreamed of becoming a great writer, but it seemed impossible for someone like me. Who would believe that a skinny boy from the Bronx could someday change the way the world saw comic books? That question would follow me for a long time.
First steps in comics.
Have you ever imagined starting your career in a place so small it seemed unlikely to lead anywhere? That was how it happened to me. At 17, in 1939, I got a job as an assistant at Timely Comics, a small publishing company that would later become the famous Marvel Comics. At first, my work was humble, filling ink wells, erasing pencil marks from comic book pages, proofreading texts, and even getting coffee for the artists. But for me, being in that environment was already like living inside a dream. I carefully observed the writers and artists, learning everything I could. Shortly after, I was given the chance to write a short text story for Captain America's magazine in 1941. It was the first time I signed as Stan Lee, instead of my real name, Stanley Martin Lieber. I still dreamed of writing great novels and didn't want to tarnish my writer's name with comics, which at the time were seen as something minor. Little did I know that this pseudonym would end up becoming my identity forever. At 19, I had the opportunity to co-write a full Captain America story. That was when I realized I was not just helping behind the scenes, I was participating in the creation of something greater. It was the first step in a journey that would change not only my life, but also that of millions of readers around the world, but there was still a long road ahead.
War and return.
Have you ever thought about how war can interrupt dreams, but at the same time shape who you are? That is exactly what happened to me. In 1942, when the United States fully entered World War II, I was drafted to serve in the Army. My role was not direct combat. I was assigned to the Division of Training Manuals and Educational Films. I wrote texts, scripts, and even comics used to instruct soldiers. It is curious to think that even in the war, my role was still tied to writing and creativity. I had the honor of working alongside names that later became legendary, like filmmaker Frank Capra and cartoonist Dr. Seuss. Although I was not on the front lines, the experience deeply shaped my view of the world. I saw firsthand the impact of war, the pain, the losses, and the constant fear that hovered over everyone. It made me reflect a lot on heroism. In real life, heroes were not beings with superpowers, but ordinary people who did what was necessary in the hardest moments. When I returned to the United States in 1945, I went back to my job at Timely Comics. But the comic book industry was no longer at its former peak. Superheroes were not selling as much, and the publisher began to bet on other genres like westerns, romance, and humor. For me, it was a period of adaptation and patience. I did not know yet, but the great revolution of my career was about to come, and it would forever change the world of comics.
The birth of modern Marvel.
Have you ever thought about giving up on something because it seemed to have no future? I almost did. In the 1950s, I was tired of writing comics in various genres that didn't excite me. I seriously thought about abandoning it all and pursuing another path as a writer. But in 1961, an unexpected opportunity changed my life. At that time, competitor DC Comics was very successful with the Justice League. My boss, Martin Goodman, wanted something similar. He asked me to create a group of superheroes. I was already discouraged, but my wife, Joan, gave me advice that changed everything. If you are going to quit anyway, why not write the way you always wanted without worrying about rules? That was when the Fantastic Four was born. I wanted characters who were different from the perfect heroes that dominated comics until then. They had flaws, they argued with each other, they faced human dilemmas. To my surprise, readers loved it. That was just the beginning. Soon after came Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and so many others. Each character reflected a bit of the real world: young people with personal problems, heroes who faced prejudice, scientists tormented by their own mistakes. I wanted to show that even heroes could be flawed, fragile, and human. And it was precisely that which won the audience over. From then on, Marvel Comics stopped being just another publisher and began to become a cultural phenomenon. The universe I was helping to create was only just beginning to grow.
Success and controversies.
Have you ever imagined creating characters that conquered the entire world and yet still faced doubts about who really deserved the credit? That was the reality of my career. In the 1960s and 1970s, Marvel exploded in popularity. Our heroes were on every newsstand, and I became the face of the publisher. I traveled, gave interviews, and spoke directly to fans through the letters pages. I loved that closeness. I always wanted readers to feel like they were part of something bigger. But at the same time, controversies began. Many said I received too much recognition, while the artists I worked with, like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, did not get the same spotlight. The truth is that comics were always teamwork. I wrote scripts and ideas, but they brought the pages to life with their brilliant art. Still, debates arose about who was the true creator of characters like Spider-Man and the X-Men. These disputes saddened me. I always deeply admired Kirby, Ditko, and all the artists I worked with. Without them, nothing we created would have happened. But at that time, the industry did not give fair credit or clear contracts. That created resentments that followed me for decades. Despite that, Marvel kept growing. Our heroes were not just comic book stories. They became symbols of a generation facing wars, prejudice, and social changes. I felt we were writing something bigger than simple adventures. We were creating modern mythology, and there was still much more to come.
Marvel Beyond Comics.
Have you ever thought about seeing your creations come to life outside the pages of paper? That was always one of my biggest dreams. Since the 1970s, I believed that Marvel's heroes could go far beyond comics. It was at that time that we began to expand into other media. The first animations appeared, like the Spider-Man and Fantastic Four series. Although simple, they showed there was a huge audience waiting to see these characters in motion. At the end of the decade, I moved to California to work closely with film and television studios. I spent years trying to convince Hollywood producers that Marvel's superheroes could become big successes on the big screen. But at that time, the interest was small, and attempts almost always resulted in low-budget adaptations of dubious quality. Still, I never gave up. Meanwhile, Marvel went through ups and downs. Changes in leadership, sales, financial crises, all of that affected the company. But I kept believing in the potential of the characters. I attended lectures, conventions, and events, always reinforcing the fans' love for this universe. Over time, the audience kept growing. The generations that had read our comics as children were now passionate adults, ready to take their own kids to the movies. The world was finally prepared for the era of superheroes on the big screen. And when that era arrived, it surpassed even my boldest dreams.